Well, hello and welcome to the Daily Challenge and Encouragement. Today I'm going to talk about religion, religious folks, and outcasts and misfits. And this was sparked in me as I ran home to let the dogs out at lunch. I was driving back and it's kind of gloomy outside and dark and a little bit rainy. And I saw this person here in Elizabeth just kind of walking down the street. And it just came to me like this person is looking downcast and alone. Maybe they aren't, but they look that way. And I thought, if this person is all alone in the world, kind of thing, and when they die, is anybody going to care? Are they just alone? Their life doesn't mean anything. They've had no major things kind of happening in their lives, or made no contribution, or not going to be remembered for much of anything. And it just made me really think about how many outcasts there are. And indeed, we are outcasts as well. It's not like it's us and them, and we're not and they are because they're less than or bad or any of those things. If we're found, it's because of the mercy and grace and love of Jesus Christ, period. And so our calling then is to love the outcasts and the misfits. So in Luke 14, um, I'm reading out of the Message version. I'll just kind of go through the setting the stage for this, but Jesus is at a meal with some of the Pharisees, and right there's a man who's, sick, swollen in his joints, and Jesus asked the religious scholars and the Pharisees, "Is it permitted to heal on the Sabbath?" I love that kind of action on Jesus's part. They're silent, so he takes the man, he heals him, and sends him on his way. And then he said, "Is there anybody here who, if an animal fell down a well, wouldn't rush to pull him out immediately?" Not asking whether it was okay to do that on the Sabbath. And they're stumped, and there's nothing they could say to that. So it goes on, and it says, he went on to tell the story to the guests around the table, noting how each had tried to elbow into the place of honor. He said, "When someone invites you to dinner, don't take the place of honor. Someone more important than you might have been invited by the host. Then he'll come out and call you out in front of everybody. You're in the wrong place. The place of honor belongs to this man. Red-faced, you'll have to make your way to the very last table, the only place left. When you're invited to dinner, go and sit in the last place. Then when the host comes, he may well say, 'Friend, come up to the front.' This will give the dinner guests something to talk about. What I'm saying is this: when you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself." Then he turned to the host. "The next time you put on a dinner, don't just invite your friends and family and rich neighbors, the kind of people who'll return a favor. Invite some people who never get invited out, the misfits from the wrong side of the tracks. You'll be and experience a blessing. They won't be able to return the favor, but the favor will be returned. Oh, how it will be returned at the resurrection of God's people." This triggered a response from one of the guests. How fortunate the one who gets to eat dinner in God's kingdom. Jesus followed up, "Yes, there was once a man who threw a great dinner party and invited many. When it was time for dinner, he sent out his servant and invited guests, saying, 'Come, the food is on the table.' Then they all began to beg off, one after another, making excuses. The first said, 'I bought a piece of property and need to take a look at it. Sorry.' Another said, 'I bought 5 teams of oxen and I really need to check them out. Sorry.' Yet another says, 'I got married and need to go home to my wife.' And the servant went back to the master, went back and told the master what had happened. He was outraged and told the servant, 'Quickly, go out into the city streets, into the alleys, collect all who look like they need a square meal, all the misfits, the homeless, the wretched that you can lay your hands on, and bring them in here. The servant reported back, Master, I did what you commanded and there's still room. The master said, then go into the country roads, into the hedges. Whoever you find, drag them in. I want my house full. Let me tell you, not one of those originally invited is going to get so much as a bite at my dinner table. And so there's so much in this, of course, that we need to pay attention to. But what I was paying attention to is the outcast. If we're the ones who are supposed to go out and drag them in, go into the hedges. Who do you think you're going to find in the hedges? Just yesterday, I was going home doing the same thing, letting the dogs out. And as I'm going home, I'm driving past a church that I know that they have a food pantry regularly at. And I see this girl with a coat on, and she's literally walking towards the hedges of the church. And I'm thinking to myself, what is she doing? Lots of things that people do in hedges, even during the daylight hours. Sometimes they go to the bathroom there. Sometimes they're doing some drugs in there. Sometimes they're looking for something that was stashed in there. I mean, there's any number of things that people do in hedges, but it's usually the downcast, the down and outer, and so on, the outcast, who's going to go into a hedge somewhere and do something. And I also thought of when we used to take the bus to Coney Island, and I used to be out on that outreach all the time. And along the hedges, which were nothing but weeds, along the fences in Coney Island where we used to park the bus, there was rats. And so the outcasts are familiar with vermin and all sorts of things in hedges. And that's where Jesus says for us to go. So, hey, take this word and run with it, and let's be doers of the word. Let's befriend the poor, the homeless, the outcast, the ones who we're not supposed to walk by. And that's why Don't Walk By exists, so that we don't walk by the outcast. And the outcast is the first one invited in to the head of the table in the kingdom of God.